Penyffordd Farm is a 15th century farmhouse in a remote area near Mold in Flintshire, Wales. Paranormal occurrences at the farm have made local and national headlines, who dubbed Penyffordd Farm as Britain's most haunted house. The Gower family moved into the farm in 1997 and began at once to make alterations. Propped up against the house outside was a headstone. The stone revealed that it belonged to Jane Jones, who had died in 1778 at the young age of 15. The headstone was removed and seemed to have stirred the spirits which lingered within the farm's walls. Rosemary Gower, the mother of the family, often saw the apparition of a pregnant girl who appeared to be grief-stricken, wandering through the gardens. Rosemary tried to approach the apparition numerous times, only for it to disappear as she got close. Intrigued and believing that the headstone and the pregnant girl were connected, Rosemary began searching through historical records and discovered that there was a Jane Jones who likely died in childbirth and was denied a church burial due to her being unmarried. But the moving of the headstone not only stirred the spirit of Jane, but seemingly opened the door for a multitude of paranormal phenomena. One night, David Gower, the father of the family, was awoken by muffled voices that were coming from the other side of his bedroom door. Fearing that they were being burgled, he shot out from his bed and went over to the door, readying himself for a confrontation. He quickly pulled open the door, expecting to surprise the burglars, but he was met only with empty darkness. After a search of the house, David found no sign of a break-in or any clue as to what the voices were. David reasoned with himself that he must have been dreaming the voices before he had woken, and went back to bed where Rosemary was still asleep. The night after, he was woken again by the muffled voices, and he nudged his wife to wake her. Both sat up and listened to the voices, but were unable to make out what they were saying. Again, David went over to the door, where he stood for a moment before pulling it open. He was met once again by empty darkness. The muffled voices were heard most nights, though they were never clear enough to make out what they were saying. As the phenomena seemingly grew, the voices were heard during the day, and the family were never able to pinpoint where they were coming from. Along with the voices came the sound of footsteps, thuds, and dragging noises as though furniture was being moved. Other phenomenon recorded is of a sinister black shadow that was often seen lingering on the stairs and would disperse when anyone got near, though it would leave a cold spot long after. But this shadow was not confined to the stairs. One night, a friend of the family stopped over after an evening of drinking to celebrate a birthday. At around 1 a.m, the door to the guest room swung open and banged against the doorstop. The friend woke up and went over to close the door. The room was icy cold despite it being summer, and at first the door refused to budge. Eventually the friend was able to close the door, only for it to open once again before she got back into bed. Believing that somehow the door must have been broken, the friend used her overnight bag to prop the door shut before going back to sleep. About an hour later, she was awoken by her bag being thrown onto the bed and the door slamming open and shut. The whole house was woken by the noise, and David rushed into the guest room. The friend explained what had happened, and David made a search of the room and house, only to find nothing. For the remainder of the night, the family friend refused to turn off the bedroom light or go to sleep. Rosemary would often find that objects had moved around the house on their own. In particular, a wooden owl that would move rooms and be placed on the hearth of the fireplace. Rosemary began documenting the phenomena in the late 90s and wrote, "One day I was moving some dried flowers that had started to look a bit manky, so I decided to throw them away. I took them from the lounge to the kitchen and put them on the counter, dropping petals all the while. Somebody came to the door and there was about 30 seconds, and when I came back, every single petal had disappeared. They had been replaced by dead or dying half-drowned wasps. There was no sign of a wasp nest, and all the doors and windows were shut. It was unexplainable." Rosemary also recorded that after they had returned from a New Year's Eve party at their daughter's house, they discovered a Welsh word written on an inside wall of their home. The family said it read Tanglefed, which is Welsh for peace in a religious context. The Gowers claim this started a flood of Welsh words appearing, like Iramos, which means long-suffering, and Irlidu, which means persecutions. Rosemary documented that the words appearing on the walls were uncommon Welsh words, and they, as a family from England, didn't speak or understand Welsh. In 2002, David and Rosemary moved to Eastbourne and left the farm to their daughter, Nicolette, and her husband and baby son. The paranormal activity continued, and one night would strike terror into Nicolette that she would never forget. She was awoken in the early hours by the sound of shuffling feet, then her baby crying. Nicolette rushed to her baby's room and came to an abrupt stop in the doorway. She saw a hooded figure which resembled a monk, leaning threateningly over her baby's cot. This monk then disappeared. Skeptics have dismissed the ghostly goings-ons as misinterpretation of natural phenomena or dishonesties of the Gower family. They point to the fact that Rosemary was very willing to talk about her experiences to the tabloids and television shows. As for the writing on the wall, a chemist explained how easily this could be done using salt water and painting over it with silver nitrate. David Gower, though a headmaster at the time, had a background as a chemist and could have easily achieved the alleged ghostly writing. As with most haunted places, Penyffordd Farm has divided opinions between skeptics and believers, and will most likely be hotly debated for years to come. But whether or not it is truly haunted comes down to one question: do you believe?